Dwayne Johnson walked into the fancy restaurant, dressed in a simple black t-shirt and jeans. No security, no fancy suit, nothing flashy, just him looking like an ordinary guy. The place was packed with rich people in designer clothes, but he didn't care. He walked up to the hostess, smiled politely and said, "Table for one, please." The hostess looked at him quickly, then back at her phone. She barely smiled. Sure. Hold on a second," she said, sounding like she wasn't impressed at all. As Dwayne waited, a couple walked in behind him, dripping in expensive clothes and jewelry. The hostess lit up instantly. "Welcome. Do you have a reservation?" she said to them with the biggest smile. Dwayne didn't say a word. He just stood there, calm, like he didn't even notice. But a few people sitting nearby started whispering. Some of them recognized him and looked, shocked that no one else did. After a minute, the hostess finally grabbed a menu and led Dwayne to a table in the corner. It wasn't a great spot, but he didn't complain. He sat down quietly, looking around like he was just a regular guy enjoying a normal day. A young waiter walked over to Dwayne's table, his posture confident, almost cocky. He glanced at Dwayne's casual clothes and smirked a little. "Welcome. Can I get you maybe some water to start?" he said, his tone slightly dismissive. Dwayne looked up with his usual warm smile. "Sure, water sounds great. And the menu, please?" The waiter handed him the menu, but not before making a comment under his breath. "Just so you know, the prices here aren't exactly cheap." Dwayne paused for a second, but instead of reacting, he just nodded. "Thanks for letting me know." The waiter didn't stop there. "We've got a lunch special. It's pretty affordable. Maybe that's something you'd like to try." His voice had that fake helpful tone, but the smirk on his face said everything. Dwayne looked at him calmly and said, "I'll take a look and decide." Nearby, a family sitting at another table started whispering loudly. One of them even pulled out a phone, clearly recognizing Dwayne. But the waiter either didn't notice or didn't care. He just gave a quick nod and walked away, shaking his head like he was judging Dwayne for even being there. Dwayne stayed quiet, flipping through the menu. He didn't seem angry, just calm, like he'd seen this kind of thing before. But the whispers around him were growing louder, and more people were starting to recognize who he really was. The waiter came back with a glass of water, setting it down with a little too much force. "Ready to order?" he asked, still wearing that smug look. Dwayne glanced at the menu, then back at the waiter. "Yeah, I'll have the steak. Medium rare, please." The waiter raised an eyebrow. "The steak? You sure? It's one of the most expensive items on the menu." Dwayne didn't flinch. He just smiled and said, "Yeah, I'm sure. Thanks." The waiter shrugged, clearly thinking this was a bad idea. "All right, just so you know, it's not refundable if you don't finish it." At this point, a few tables nearby had stopped eating. People were staring, some of them nudging each other and pointing. A couple of phones were out, subtly recording. The waiter didn't seem to notice the growing attention. He just walked off, shaking his head and muttering something about wasting time. Meanwhile, Dwayne sat there quietly, sipping his water. He wasn't making a scene, wasn't reacting at all, but the energy in the room was changing. More and more people were realizing who he was, and the tension was building. As the waiter disappeared into the kitchen, the restaurant manager walked out to check on the dining area. He was an older man with a sharp eye, scanning the tables to ensure everything was running smoothly. Then he froze. His eyes landed on Dwayne, sitting quietly in the corner. For a second, the manager looked like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He rushed over, weaving through the tables as quickly as he could. "Mr. Johnson," the manager said, his voice filled with excitement. The room fell completely silent. All eyes were now on Dwayne. Dwayne smiled politely and stood up to shake the manager's hand. "Hey, how's it going?" he said casually. The manager looked embarrassed, glancing around at the staff, especially the waiter who had just come back with the steak. The waiter's face turned pale as he realized what was happening. "Sir, I'm so sorry for any inconvenience. If I'd known you were here," the manager began. But Dwayne cut him off with a laugh. "It's all good, man. No need to make a big deal out of it," Dwayne said, still as calm and kind as ever. The waiter was frozen in place, his mouth slightly open. He looked like he wanted to disappear. The whispers in the restaurant turned into loud murmurs and more people pulled out their phones to record what was happening. The manager turned to the waiter, his tone sharp. "Do you have any idea who this is?" The waiter stammered. I didn't realize." Dwayne just smiled again, waving it off. "No worries. Let's just enjoy the food, yeah?" Dwayne sat back down, smiling calmly. The manager insisted. The meal was on the house, but Dwayne shook his head. "No need for that. I'll pay like everyone else." Before leaving, he asked for the bill and left a tip that was more than the waiter's monthly salary. The waiter, still shaken, stammered out a weak, "Thank you." Dwayne looked at him with a small smile. "It's all good. Just remember, treat everyone with respect. You never know who's sitting at your table." With that, he walked out quietly, leaving the entire restaurant in stunned silence. The waiter stood there, holding the tip, realizing he'd just learned a lesson he'd never forget.